This week on True Crime Never Sleeps podcast, we dive into the issue of jury nullification. So join us today on the True Crime Never Sleeps podcast. Welcome to the True Crime Never Sleeps podcast, the podcast where I share true crime stories for your entertainment. But you might lose some sleep after listening to some of these stories. I'm your host, Larry Lace. And after reading about true crime stories, I condense all the content and bring valuable information to you. To stay up to date with all my content, check out our Twitter account at TrueCrimeNS. Subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. This show is sponsored by...
Welcome to an all-new season of the True Crime Never Sleeps podcast. This season, we dive into the most horrific unsolved murders in history. From the Black Dahlia murder to the unsolved murder of the Lady of the Dunes. Join us every Tuesday on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. As always, we thank you for listening.
Another episode, and today we're stepping away from true crime. We will, however, talk about the other side of the story, the jury. The role of the jury is to provide unbiased views or resolution to evidence presented in a case in a court of law. Jury service helps to support fairness in trials. Jury service is able to give impartial viewpoints on cases that are presented in court. However, the jury is composed of humans, and humans have feelings and are based in some sort of way. The jury is also able to notice that maybe something is wrong in the case presented, but their only duty is to present an unbiased vote, not to discuss if the case is right or wrong, even if the law is just or not. So in many ways, the jury is put in a tough position that they must judge someone knowing that something is wrong or the law is not being applied correctly. In today's episode, we will talk about jury nullification and if jurors should ever deviate from the law. But to get started, let's understand what jury nullification is and how it applies to today's world. Jury nullification generally occurs when members of a criminal trial jury believe that a defendant is guilty but choose to acquit the defendant anyways, because the jurors consider that the law itself is unjust, that the prosecutor has misapplied the law in the defendant's case, or that the potential punishment for breaking the law is too harsh. Some juries have also refused to convict due to their own prejudices in favor of the defendant. In summary, jury nullification means that the jury is able to not convict a guilty person because they believe that the law is incorrect, or even due to their own bias, which can become very tricky since the duty of the jury is to provide an unbiased opinion. So what should be done? Well, we know that the law is not perfect. There are areas that must be corrected and adjusted in today's society. Sometimes the law is too harsh, and sometimes the law is too light. So to reduce the bias of the jury, a reformulation of major and common laws should be taken into consideration. We know that changing the law is not the job of a jury, but the jury has the power to show where the law is lawful and needs to be fixed. Jurors may wish to nullify for a number of reasons, including a belief that the law is unjust or unjustly applied, belief that the penalty for violating the law is too harsh, or belief that there are mitigating circumstances that would make strict enforcement of the law unjust in a particular case. But there is not enough. Making a different decision than what is expected will not change the system, but a series of actions and programs towards the change of certain laws will change the system. Speaking of the U.S., it is illegal for a judge to direct a jury that it must deliver a guilty verdict. Jurors cannot be punished for their verdicts, whatever the reasons may be, and a jury's verdict of not guilty cannot be overturned, which means that the judge cannot influence the jury's decision, even if he or she believes that the decision is wrong. Jury nullification is legal in the U.S., and the jury cannot be punished for reaching a, quote, or unquote wrong decision. A defendant who is acquitted cannot, in many jurisdictions, be tried the second time for the same offense. These facts bring us to a tough conclusion. Jury nullification can be very dangerous and leave guilty people free. I see its main duty to correct the law and strengthen our legal system. So yes, jurors should deviate from the law when they believe the law is not serving the main purpose, which is keeping people accountable for their wrongdoings and being punished in a fair way. They should make a decision, but right after that, a plan of action should be put in place to analyze and correct the sections of the law that are not serving its purpose. And that's a wrap for today's discussion. As we all should agree, crimes are never good and bring sadness to countless people. It is important, though, for us to try to understand the reasoning behind such tragedies and create awareness to avoid it from happening again. True Crimes Never Sleeps, and we're here to bring you the best stories full of details and knowledge. For more information on the podcast, follow us on Twitter at TrueCrimeNS and subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform. Once again, we'd like to thank our sponsor, Poddex. Check them out today at poddex.com. Use promo code TCNS for 10% off your first order. Let us know your thoughts about jury nullification by sending us a tweet or leave us a comment on Facebook. Just search True Crime Never Sleeps. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the True Crime Never Sleeps podcast. Follow us on Twitter at TrueCrimeNS. Like us on Facebook at True Crime Never Sleeps. Send us a voice message at anchor.fm/truecrimeneversleeps/message. Tune in next week for an all-new episode.